Thank you. Yeah, I tell you, we had a bit of that up in Port Moresby.
Oh,
Yeah. Anyway, it was a good meeting.
When was it? Moresby?
Yeah, was it terrific? You're about to be, have water lapping at your doors. Yeah.
Hello! How's everyone tonight? Ooh, let's go. Ooh, a nice little shuffle there. How are you all? My name is Chris Quinlan. Welcome to Melbourne Musos Facebook Live. Hey. Oh. There you go. Now, what a week. Hey, hello camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, and you out there in Facebook land. Here we go. Ooh, what shall I start with today? I'm going to talk what I played before. Is a band called Narasirato, panpipe band. The piece of music is Haritarina. And my friends, that is the music of the Solomon Islands. Yeah. Let's talk about the Solomon Islands this week, shall we? Okay, lock and load is what I said before. So I'm going to go on about this. And what is music of Solomon Islands? I'm straight into it. I'm going to talk a lot about different things. When I do my research every Friday, I adore it. I love it. I'm a student of music. I love it. And what I noticed is so many connections of different things. This happens here, it affects there. That happens there, it affects this. And that affects that. It goes, there you go. And what I'd like to talk about tonight is this wonderful music, so vibrant and loving and caring, wonderful stuff. I have a bit of a connection to the Solomon Islands, but I'll get into that later. Okay. The music of Solomon Islands has received international attention since before the country became independent from the United Kingdom in 1978. Folk music, traditional Melanesian music in Solomon Islands includes both group and solo vocals, slit drums and panpipe ensembles. Panpipe orchestras, which are well known on Maleta and Guadalcanal, use up to 10 performers with different instruments, each with unique tunings. I'm going to stop there. Actually, I won't. I'll do one more sentence. In the 1920s, bamboo music gained a following in several countries. Bamboo music was made by hitting open-ended bamboo tubes of varying sizes, originally with coconut husks. After American soldiers brought their sandals to the Solomon Islands, these replaced coconut husk by the early 1960s, just as the music began spreading to Papua New Guinea. So it's all very close to home. Now, who's heard of the Blue Man Group? Okay, I'll put them up there. The Blue Man Group on the blue screen, I suppose, or whatever. And what goes on is anyone who's seen them play, they're quite fantastic at going waka, 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 waka. You know, basically on plumbing pipes. But what happens is the originations of it is just what I said, one of the central planks of Solomon Islands music is that you'll see them in rows. And it's just, well, I'll put them up there and there. There you go. And what happens is when I go over here, my piccolo toms, I'll take out the ladies for a second. there it is there. Can you imagine, you know, wabba dabba 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 dabba. And in my research today, oh boy, the men who are doing it, oh boy, single strokes from up here. And I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to do an Anzac Day show. This is one of them. And what happens is that it comes down to technique and your rudiments and stuff. But this music, it almost reminds me of minimalism with Philip Glass and Steve Reich and people like that. Yeah. There you go. And what happens is the Narasirato panpipe band are doing that. Could you tell there was that wonderful? I've gone. What? Do they celebrate St. Paddy's Day as well? I mean, it's like it's like an Irish jig, right? They got that. Now, when I'm doing that, let's talk drums a little bit there. I'm doing the shuffle. To be able to do that, one of the things that I try and do is get my students to actually, what you see with your hand, you do with your foot. And I often talk about imagine an imaginary fishing line tied to the end of your stick, or in this case mallet, and the end of the fishing line is tied to your big toe, and away you go. You see, you got that kind of thing. And then you build it up. And then I'll put the ladies back in. This is a choir kind of thing. There you go. I'll put it there. And so for all intents and purposes, let's call that triplets. 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a... You got that beautiful kind of thing, and that's that sort of business there. Now that's like your shuffle. There it is there. And what goes on is that as you know, like the Solomon Islands, you know, that's got a bit of a history, and I'll get to that in a minute because I've got a prepared piece for you a little bit later on. But what happens is when you're talking about when the Solomon Islands were, discovered, if you know what I'm getting at, you know, when the Spanish and then English, everything else, of course they would take on certain aspects of the culture. One of the things that is really interesting, now the Solomon Islands loom large for World War II. It was such fighting that went on, Guadalcanal and all that. They make movies about it, just how tough it was, how rough. And what it is that when the American soldiers and the Australian soldiers, everybody came in, what happened was, of course, the culture was mixed up. When everything came in. And one of the things that I noticed, I've gone, this harmony, this could be a Hank Williams song. The first time I heard one particular song, I was going, Johnny Cash could be singing this and no one would know the difference, you know. And one of the first things, I've just done the... Now, I could be doing that on St. Paddy's Day, and everyone say, oh, it's an Irish jig. And here I am saying, I've just played it. Such happy stuff, you know. Boom, ba boom, ba boom. Can you hear the boom, ba boom, ba boom? That's the sandals on the bamboo tubes is what they are. And then what happens is some of the other tunes, I mean, I'm going to think, I'm going to tip, if I had a hat, I'd tip it to Nick Cushion. Mate, you got the train beat again. Hear a train rolling down the bend. I don't know where I'm going. But we're not doing Folsom Prison, Nick Cushion. What we're doing is we're doing the Melanesian music with the tubes. So what start to go on? You start to get this. There it is. I pulled that last stroke like that. But what it is like you've got that train beat. Okay. Now Johnny Cash and people like that, and Hank Williams and all the country greats that love the train beat got it from the train when you're going across, the tracks. And all that. A little while ago, about a year and a half ago now, time seems to fly. The COVID time seems to just fly. It's all a bit of a blur. But I talked about The Littlest Hobo once upon a time. Who remembers that old TV show? And it started off with this, with the brushes, right? I'm not going to do that. What happens is that what goes on is that when we're talking about the war years, for which we're all going to, be there for Anzac Day on Monday, what happens is that when the armies came through and the battles, the people of the Solomon Islands got on incredibly well with the Americans. The Americans were apparently very easygoing and helped them rebuild the islands, Honiara, the capital. And so there was a bit of a lasting legacy. So, of course, one tends to think that when, they were playing their music, the Americans I'm talking about, the people of the islands would pick them up and sing along. And you've got to remember that it became such a thing that part of the language is known as Pidgin English. We know it as Pidgin English and all that, but it's part of their culture and how they learnt to communicate with us. Both, not just the Americans, but the Australians as well, loomed large. And so when I'm hearing, one's got to think, well, where did that come from? Let me talk about it. First, it's a two-feel. Now, when you're talking about a panpipe band and stuff, when you look at the footage, go off, YouTube it, you're going to see a guy go, buh, 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 like that. Now, that's a jug band. Get the old flagon out, flagon with the dragon has the brew that is true. Danny Kaye. What goes on is, buh, 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 buh. Big panpipes, mate. Big, huge ones, Buh, buh, and then this, one of the reasons why I've got the mallets is to make it fairly clear. But one of the other things that I can do is bring up these little fellas here. Oh, I might bring out the big ones. Oh, there we go. Here's some big, huge ones for you. The broomsticks, self-cleaning. If I ever need to dust up Doris, use these. Oh, they're huge. Memories. Okay, so there you go. All right. But anyway, moving right along. So there's your train beat, you see. So what happens is you've got your cut time. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So your hands are playing single stroke roll, and you've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 with an accent on 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Now everyone knows this. Ready, Steve? And it. All right, fellas, let's go. So what goes on is that we know this beat well. How did they get it? Where did it come from? We're all connected. That's what it is. The answer is quite simple. I say so often to my students, music is absolutely literal. Okay, like in guitar chords, if you're looking at a E7 sharp 9, the Hendrix chord. Why should I know this? I'm a drummer. But anyway, but what goes on? It's telling you exactly what it is. You see, and so when you're starting to look at these beats, things like what is best known as the calypso can be a soukos in Africa. It can be many things in many different countries, depending on what you want to do and how you do it. Just be careful of not saying the wrong name in the wrong country. By comrade, that kind of thing. There, you've got to think about it a little bit. But one of the other things is that there's various, like I always remember when I first heard it on 2 bass drums, Billy Cobham, for which Alex Van Halen tips the hat to for the beat for Hot for Teachers. It goes like that, you see, and that's what goes on with that. Now, with all of this, let's start getting into our rudiments, because when you look at the footage of the orchestra doing that, man, they're working. Ooh, there's a bit of natural technique happening there. So let me take you through it. What happens is when you look at any particular arm, what you have is a series of joints. Okay. There you go. Insert joke here. But what happens is you've got your shoulder, your elbow, you've got your wrist, and then you've got your 5 fingers and all the joints therein. They all hopefully work together. So what happens is one of the things is when you're dealing with moving around the drums, and for those wonderful musicians of the Solomon Islands that are moving around their, their tubes, what happens is they're playing harmony. So much of it's bluesy, actually, funnily enough. It's the typical 1-4-5, actually. A little bit of turnaround in there. I'm going, oh man, I just picked it up. Oh, that one's in D. That's great. There you go. And then this one's in something else. And what happens is that with that, you start to move around. These men have got this single stroke roll. When you're marching, the reason you have traditional grip is because you have a field drum off the side, and you've got to be like that, you see. If you tried doing a match grip, you'd be up here like that, and, no good for the old posture there. So the traditional grip is, that's why it's called traditional. It's literal, you see. And what happens is that when you're doing things like this, you need to get your flow. And what starts to happen is, depending on where you are and what you're doing, what's going on is that you might start with just a single stroke roll or wrist. Then in there's the fingers. And when you're doing that, that is called a ruff. R-U-F-F. There you go. You've got wrist stroke and you've got finger control. And I talk about it all the time. I love my continuity. It's the Moeller technique and the Gladstone technique. But we're talking about Solomon Islands. How did they get that technique? And that's because of their music. Being able to just... Now, this kind of business, you can go to Africa and it's all on djembes, from this big to this big, tree trunk stuff. How do they do it? And then you can go to South America and they have congas. Oh, how do they do it? Well, it's all connected, mate. So what happens when you're doing things like this, what starts to happen is that when you're working, if you're going to do, you can see most of this is wrist and fingers. But you see, the forearm comes down for the, that kind of thing. The vipstra, and all that stuff. And what happens then is that as you work this up, you start to mix the sticking up. But when you have to move to different drums, this is where the shoulder and the elbow comes in, you see. And then you have things called pivot points, because what happens is if I'm going to go over to the floor tom, mate, like that, I'm not going to go, Hail Caesar, whatever. You're going to have, you have this pivot. So you got a little bit of pivot thing. So what goes on is you have, so it's just, I did the paramadoodle pyramid the other week, so that's what happens there. You see, it's like wax on, wax off, that sort of thing. There you go. So, there it is there. I'll carry on with a little bit of reading for you, everybody. Oh, Uncle Arthur's back. Hello, everybody, how are you doing? I might get a, hey Marcus, I might get another copyright strike from that bloke who's trying to pinch all my music. That's a bit cryptic. Just so everyone knows, I think most of you out there know that during the COVID lockdown, colleagues and I were doing clips remotely. Everything's remote, I had some people just singing into their phone, that kind of thing. And because I happen to have the equipment for the show, let's get something done. It's just, for me, it was if there's any light in the dark, that was it. To deal with these beautiful people. And then Channel 31 has given me the go-ahead to make a TV show, or at very least, I call it the Gorilla TV show, because not that there's gorillas in it, but the fact that they're going to put it on as shorts here, shorts there, maybe the whole show, and maybe a whole half hour worth of all this business. And some dude on Facebook started putting copyright strikes because I was doing things like seagulls and wind, all the Final Cut Pro things, and real parasitic stuff, if I'm going to have a bit of a crack about it. And I put in dispute after dispute, and this morning I got the news that I won. There you go, thank you very much. Ta-da! But that has nothing to do with this current subject here. I'll keep on going. Where was I? In the 1920s, bamboo music gained a following in several countries. Bamboo music was made by hitting open-ended bamboo tubes of varying sizes. I've talked about that already and all that. Let me see. In the 1950s, Edwin Nanu Sitori composed the song Walkabout Long Chinatown, which was to become popular throughout the Pacific and has been referred to by the government as the unofficial national song of the Solomon Islands. I shouldn't say they take it out, it's just Solomon Islands, there it is. Modern Solomon Islander popular music includes various kinds of rock and reggae, as well as something known as island music, a guitar and ukulele ensemble format influenced by Polynesian and Christian music. Traditional Melanesian choir singing features heavily in the soundtrack of the film The Thin Red Line, which is set against the backdrop of the battle for Guadalcanal, which is, as I said, looms very, very large. Now, I'm talking music, I'm talking lots of different things. I'm even talking about, respect. I did make the mention about the copyright strike. Sometimes I draw a bit of a long bow with different things. But one of the things about the Solomon Islands is that so many Australians went over there during World War II, including my father. He was part of the 13 light ships out of Torquay in Bougainville. And when I was with the dear City of Essendon Brass Band, I was there for a while. I'd still be with them if I didn't have my job as teaching poppets at night. I'm pretty much permanent afternoon shift. So I'd have to give up a night's work to go rehearse. So, but I do love them dearly, and if anyone's watching, there you go. And what it was you'd wear your dad's medals. And all that. I got pretty big, and the big thing about dear old Dad was the fact that Solomon Islands was his years fighting for us all. And what happens with that, he had many a story to tell. You'd have to give him a couple of brandy and dries to, get him started. But once he started, and his memories of it, well, the thing he always said, the people were beautiful, the islanders themselves. Now I've got something that I want to play to you. What happens is after I finish this, I implore you to just go YouTube and just music of the Solomon Islands, that kind of thing, and have a listen. Go have a listen. Listen how beautiful it is, how the culture, it's gorgeous. When I play this, Joe Zawinul, the keyboard player for Weather Report, looms large, because I've got an album in the other room. And when I started doing the research for the music and shall I use the Peruvian panpipe kind of deal, the same kind of thing. My patches down here, it says Peruvian, from Peru. So there's a real commonality. This is the thing that I employed. I started the show with it. We're all connected, mate. There you go. And one has to think, well, if they're going to go, boo, 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 well, that's jug band stuff, after you finish the content. Or maybe you don't. You can tune them all up. And with whatever's in there. But anyway. But Joe Zawinul put out an album, and there was one track, the first one. He just had that going on. And for that, I'm pretty much using here's a drum show, double paradiddle. There you have it, and go check it out. I'll put it up there because I can't remember the name, and there we have it. But I'm going to finish off now with a little bit of, usually I do a story, but this time I'll do something a little bit different. So I've got to set this up. I've got a little bit of an ambient amp. Hope someone doesn't send me a copyright strike for that. Dirty bastard. Set this up. First of all, respect, I found a beautiful little piece on YouTube today from a chap by the name of Natty. And he said something beautiful about his people in the Solomon Islands. I'll use his words to begin with.
Still live, practice, and do things on the island, even though what the world is saying about rising sea level and all this. My own people believe that whenever there's a meter of the rising of the ocean, they will put another 2 or 3 more rocks just to add on. Whenever this rising of the ocean, they will rise up the islands also. So.
Couple of extra rocks. Let's keep going.
Here we go.
Ahem. Solomon Islands is a sovereign country consisting of 6 major islands and over 900 smaller islands in Oceania, to the east of Papua New Guinea and northwest of Vanuatu. It has a land area of 28,400 square kilometres and a population of 652,858. Its capital, Honiara, is located on the largest island, Guadalcanal. The country takes its name from the Solomon Islands archipelago, which is a collection of Melanesian islands that also includes the North Solomon Islands, a part of Papua New Guinea, but excludes outlying islands such as the Santa Cruz Islands and Ranel and Bellona. The islands have been settled since at least some time between 30,000 and 28,800 BC, with later waves of migrants, notably the Lapita people, mixing and producing the modern indigenous Solomon Islanders population. In 1568, the Spanish navigator Alvaro de Mendana was the first European to visit them, naming them the Islas Salomon. Mendana returned decades later in 1595, and another Spanish expedition, not to be confused with the Spanish Inquisition, led by Portuguese navigator Pedro Fernandes de Quiras, visited the Solomons in 1606. Britain defined its area of interest in the Solomon Islands archipelago in June 1893, when Captain Gibson RN of HMS Curacao declared the southern Solomon Islands a British protectorate. During World War II, the Solomon Islands campaign from 1942 to 1945 saw fierce fighting between the United States Commonwealth forces, including Australia, and the Empire of Japan, including the Battle of Guadalcanal. The official name of the then British administration was changed from the British Solomon Islands Protectorate to the Solomon Islands in 1975, and the self-government was achieved the following year. Independence was obtained and the name changed to just Solomon Islands, without the definite article, in 1978. At independence, Solomon Islands became a constitutional monarchy. The Queen of Solomon Islands is Elizabeth II, represented by the Governor-General. Blackbirding. Beginning in the 1840s and accelerating in the 1860s, islanders began to be recruited or often kidnapped as labourers for the colonies in Australia, Fiji and Samoa, in a process known as blackbirding. Conditions for workers were often poor and exploitative, and local islanders often violently attacked any Europeans who appeared on their island. The blackbird trade was chronicled by prominent Western writers such as Joe Melvin and Jack London. World War II. From 1942 until the end of 1943, the Solomon Islands were the scene of several major land, sea and air battles between the Allies and the Japanese Empire's armed forces. Following the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, war was declared between Japan and the Allied powers, and the Japanese, seeking to protect their southern flank, invaded Southeast Asia and New Guinea. In May 1942, the Japanese launched Operation Mo, occupying Tulagi and most of the western Solomon Islands, including Guadalcanal, where they began work on an airstrip. The British administration had already relocated to Orkney, Malta, as most of the European population had been evacuated to Australia. The Allies counter-invaded Guadalcanal in August 1942, followed by the New Georgia Campaign in 1943, both of which were turning points in the Pacific War, stopping and then countering the Japanese advance. The conflict resulted in thousands of Allied, Japanese and civilian deaths, as well as immense destruction across the islands. Coast watchers from the Solomon Islands played a major role in providing intelligence and rescuing other Allied servicemen. US Admiral William Halsey, the commander of Allied forces during the Battle for Guadalcanal, recognized the Coast Watchers' contributions by stating, "The Coast Watchers saved Guadalcanal and Guadalcanal saved the South Pacific." In addition, around 3,200 men served in the Solomon Islands Labour Corps, and some 6,000 enlisted in the British Solomon Islands Protectorate Defence Force, with their exposure to the Americans leading to several social and political transformations. For example, the Americans had extensively developed Honiara, with the capital shifting there from Tulagi in 1952, and the Pidgin language was heavily influenced by the communication between Americans and the island's inhabitants. The relatively easygoing, friendly attitude of the Americans also contrasted sharply with the subservience expected by the British colonial rulers, and profoundly changed Solomon Islanders' attitude to the colonial regime.
That's just mate. I tell you, we had a bit of that up in Port Moresby.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, it was a good meeting. When was it?
Anything was about to be, have water up in Thank you. Yeah, I tell you, we had a bit of that up in Port Moresby.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, it was a good meeting. It was a good meeting.
When was it in hospital?
The deer wasn't anything. He was about to be, have water lapping at your face.